Piece number 4 is our second dose of Bach. It's another extract from his Violin Partita number 1 in B minor, and this is movement 6 called Double, which might be a little bit confusing on its own. But when you look at the structure of the partita as a whole, it's a series of 4 different Baroque and earlier period dances, and each one is followed by a second movement called Double, which is a variation and a development on the original chord progression and melody. So it's a kind of more straightforward melody on a dance form, and then the violinist playing a kind of almost a solo, if you will, on the same chord progression after each one. And that alternates throughout the 8 movements of the partita as a whole. So to help you understand this piece, I do urge you to have a listen to not only movement 6 from a recording of the Violin Partita in B minor, but also movement 5, which is the dance that this is actually based on. Example 4a explains a few useful bits of terminology surrounding chords, chord inversions, and chord shapes. So you might be familiar with chord inversions, which is taking a chord, say C major for example, and changing the order of notes from lowest to highest, so different notes other than the root note are in the bass. If we have a major chord, we have 3 notes in it. We have building it from that major scale, so C major scale. And we would take the first note, the third note, and the 5th note. And we're just doubling those up. So if you see a 6-note C major chord, for example, this bar chord shape, we still only have 3 notes in it, but we're just doubling them up in different relationships. So the different inversions would be having the C in the bass, the E or the 3rd in the bass, or the 5th, the G notes in the bass. But separate to that, we can voice the chord in different ways. So in example 4a, I've played 3 different what's called closed voicings. And looking at the notation might be easier for you to understand this. You can see that all 3 of the dots in the notation, you don't have to necessarily be familiar with what letters those dots are, but you can see they're very close together. There's no gaps between them. They're as close as possible, while still using just those 3 pitches. These examples are followed by 3 open voicing chords, and then you'll see that the 3 dots, which are still just using C, E and G, are much wider. We've broken them up, we've exploded them over a wider range. Because of the violin's tuning and scale length, as I said in chapter 3, it's much easier for a violinist to play open voicing chords that cover a bigger range than closed voicing chords, which would be easier on the guitar with our 4th tuning and our longer scale range. That said, open voicing triads have a fantastic sound. They give us a lot of harmonic information while not sounding muddy or dense, particularly in the lower regions of the guitar. They work really well both as rhythm guitar ideas and lead guitar ideas. The first example is from Eric Johnson's classic track, Cliffs of Dover, and he uses a lot of open voice triads melodically, 1 note at a time, to create these leaping, exciting melodic jumps. And the second example is from Sting's Shape of My Heart, written by Dominic Miller on guitar, and they feature open voice triads in more of a rhythm guitar, finger-picked context. Exercise 4b is looking at more technical issues, and this time addressing things that the fretting hand might encounter. This will hopefully be useful throughout the book, but particularly for this piece as it comes up quite a lot. We're going to look at how to play adjacent notes that are on the same fret but on different strings. And you really have 2 options here. The first is called a bar roll, where we take 1 note on 1 string. If we're going from low to high string, then we're going to play that note on the tip of the finger, and then pull the elbow and the arm back to roll the finger onto its pad. So we cut off the bottom one and start fretting the higher one. Some players really don't get on with this technique, depending on kind of how you can make your joints move and be flexible. And some players, even really well-established players, try to avoid this by using two fingers next to each other. Sometimes one method is better for a particular passage, sometimes the other way, and exercise 4B breaks down how we might practice both approaches and try the one which works best for you. So exercise 4C is labelled in the book as leapfrog picking. This isn't an official technique name, but I think it describes what we're doing. And once again, this is to tackle the challenges laid out by trying to play violin music on guitar. And there are a couple of instances in this piece particularly, but again in the other Bach movement as well, where we have to play two notes in the same direction, not only one note per string, but actually with a string missed out in between each one. So sweep picking is not going to work, because if we need to play the A string, the G string and the E string, we can't sweep because we're going to hit the D and hit the B. So the technique I developed is to skip over the strings, and the motion that I kind of have in mind that helps me picture what I need to do and do it in a relaxed, efficient kind of way is almost like skimming stones on water. You want to kind of hit that first string and then bounce over the next one. It sounds very precarious, but with a little bit of time spent looking at exercise 4C, I think you'll get the hang of it. Lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the rhythm of this piece, because it's slightly more unusual than certainly the other movement from the Violin Partita, and I think pretty much any of the other pieces in the book. And it's because this piece is in 9/8. How you can think of this is that we've really got 3 beats per bar, and each beat in the bar is a triplet. So we're thinking of 1 under, 2 under, 3 under. Now, to get the right feel for the dance, and this is really down to how you want to interpret the piece, again, goes back to listening to several versions of violin players playing this, and you'll get a feel for the way they attack the rhythm. But in general, the kind of authentic way to play this rhythm in this dance would be to accentuate the first beat of each bar. The second beat, as in the 2 under, is going to be a bit weaker. And then the third beat is going to be slightly stronger to propel us into the next beat, the next bar of the piece. So we're going to get a 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 1 under, 2. So as I'll play through just the A section of this piece, try and listen out for how I'm stressing that. Even though, for now, just to demo it, I'm going to play it quite metronomically, just to bring that out a little bit more clearly.